How did the employees react to it when you walked in the door that first day?
It's kind of a funny story. I'm a talker if you hadn't noticed, and I get up and introduce myself, try to crack some jokes, and like it's crickets. And I'm like, "Oh." And what I've come to learn is the previous owner was very much sort of that old school command and control. Like everything went through him. He told
Mhm.
everybody what to do and told them when they did it wrong. And so most people just didn't talk. It wasn't that they didn't have anything to say, it's just they weren't used to it.
Welcome to the Machine Shop Mastery Podcast, where we uncover the stories behind successful machine shops and their owners. By interviewing current and former shop owners, we dig deep to unveil their secrets of success and the struggles and challenges they've overcome on their paths to building thriving shops. We aim to elevate how important the machining industry is and inspire others by highlighting why owning a shop can be a great vehicle to creating jobs, stimulating the economy, and creating wealth. Here's our host, former machine shop owner himself, Paul Van Meter.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Machine Shop Mastery. Sometimes you meet someone that is just so dynamic, so full of ideas, so full of energy that it just gets you pumped up and excited. Well, that is exactly what happened today when I got to sit down with Billy Banks of General Machine. Billy has a fascinating background in manufacturing of sorts in the steel industry and the RV industry, but about 13 months ago, he bought a machine shop and is just diving in deep and learning the industry, improving this business, and doing a lot of things very well. So even though he's not like a super senior expert in the industry, there are so many takeaways that are super relevant and valuable to anyone running a shop. So from the way he's approaching, the culture with his team, taking it from what was a more command and control type culture to something that's much more supportive, collaborative, personalized, the way he's driving metrics, sales and marketing, some of the cool things he's doing with AI. There's just so many takeaways here. So I know you're going to enjoy it. Let us dig in and go meet Billy. Billy, welcome to Machine Shop Mastery. Good to have you here.
Good to be here, Paul. Thank you. Appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you're doing some pretty interesting stuff. I love your story, and I definitely wanted to share it with the metalworking nation here. So let's start by just giving us a little snapshot of General Machine, kind of what it looks like as a business, and then let's go back and talk about how you got involved and your bit of your background
Yeah,
and all that kind of stuff.
absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm in month 13 of this journey. So General Machine is a job shop. We're located in Freeburg, Illinois, which is just east of St. Louis. We are a combination machine shop, fabrication shop, so we can do everything from cutting, bending, forming, machining, welding, and we can do some blasting and paint. So we try to be a almost end-to-end solution to a lot of our customers. The business started really as like a lot of these job shops, fixing people's tractors, trailers, whatever in a,
Mm,
in a shop, and 30 years later, still do a little bit of that. That's probably 15% or so of the business, what we call kind of our time and material jobs. And the rest is
yep.
anything from one-off projects to small batch production. We do a lot in the heavy equipment, construction, kind of aggregate mining space,
Mhm.
which is kind of heavy in and around St. Louis. Yeah, I think our
Cool.
niche is we have a combination of like CNC and manual machines, which I'm learning what all that is about, which is kind of cool. And we do medium to large parts. So I think that's where kind of our sweet spot is for customers. It's probably something that's too big for their shop or doesn't quite fit their flow. They find
Yeah.
us, we have that capability to do that complex, larger part for them. And we'll talk about some of the other trends that I'm seeing in the direction I'm taking later. So
Nice. Yeah, I was just checking out your website, and there's definitely some pretty large stuff. Absolutely, you need cranes on it. No one's putting that on the machine by hand,
no,
and
no,
uh, and some big weldments, and yeah, some complicated stuff. So now you say you're 13 months into it. You clearly didn't start this business.
no.
Tell us how you got involved.
How I got here. Well, I guess how far back do you want to go? Do you want the story of how I got to
I'd love to
General
hear
Machine?
the anything that's related to why you decided to buy a machine shop at some
Yeah.
point, early career, influences or whatever.
Yeah, well, I'll I'll go back and you can hack it together and say, that's too much riffraff. As we get older, our stories get longer. And
That is
I
true.
look in the mirror and I still see brown hair, and then I see this, and I'm like, oh, I am gray. Uh,
Yes.
so anyhow, started my career in my family business, which was a third generation forest products company. From Elkhart, Indiana, so it's the RV capital. Basically, if you can tow it or float it, there's a good chance we built it. Our business started as a wholesaler distributor of lumber, supplying the manufactured housing industry. As that industry grew, we grew with it. When my dad and uncle came into it, they really moved it from that model into manufacturing. This is when trusses were going from being built by hand at the job site to in the factory. And after that transition, my dad kind of looked at it and go, well, these guys that are building manufactured houses and then RVs, they need frames. So he bought a steel business and we started building frames and bundled that together with the lumber and sold that to our customers. When I came out of college, I was thrown into the steel side of our business because my dad believed this is where the growth was. First thing I did was a turnaround. So I learned all about lean manufacturing. We also had a coatings division, so I learned about how to pass audits with the military. And so, if you would have told me 40 some years ago that I'd be in manufacturing, I'd have looked at you like you were crazy. But here I am, and
Hmm.
because of my family business, we ended up. There was a bunch of stuff that happened in there. Went and got my MBA, came back as a COO of my family business. 3 years later, we sold, but at the same time, I started my first company, which is a steel business that built frames for motorized RV. And then because I had
Okay.
been in the RV business, we started doing towable and I grew that business from basically nothing with some capital from friends and family and some folks that I'd worked with in the previous part of my career, and grew that from 0 to 25 million. We sold that in 2011. Sold the family business in 2006, and then I had this idea. I'm like, hey, we're selling all these parts, the big competitor, but they don't want the back office. So my company was growing my steel business. So I'm like, hey, to my controller, my head of HR, I'm like, I think there might be other companies like me out there that could use part-time, which we now call fractional, like HR and accounting support. What do you guys think? Well, they're all going to be out of jobs. So they were dumb enough to say yes. So we started this company that was basically an outsourced fractional HR and accounting firm. And that business grew. We grew right through the Great Recession of '08, '09. A lot of people were looking to outsource. So then I learned about the power of the back office and how you could streamline and bundle these different services together to offer value to clients. Then the whole, personal and life kinda got involved and things went a little haywire. I met my now wife at the end of 2009. It was one of those 6 months later, we're engaged, 6 months later, married. 6 months after that, I sold most of my steel company. I say most, which we'll come back to in a minute. And then 2 weeks after that, she got diagnosed with breast cancer. So my life went
Oh
kinda like
man.
this entrepreneurial, "Yeah, I got the girl, I sold my company, life is awesome," to, "Excuse me, what happened? What?" And a whole bunch of other life stuff happened, which led me to eventually sell my HR outsourcing business to the management team. I kept the steel business, but became a absentee owner for the most part of that business while trying to tend to the health and recovery of my wife.
Hmm.
One of the side effects of cancer is infertility, so we hired a surrogate. I'll fast forward through all the gory details if you want a whole nother session on that.
Wow.
You can find me on the
Okay.
couch with a beer. But we hired a surrogate. We burned through 20 or 23 embryos about a year and a half into that process. One day, my wife wakes up. She runs to the bathroom, projectile vomits. Turns out she's pregnant. Wasn't supposed to be. So, we're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We had our final transfer scheduled with the surrogate. My wife looks at me like, what are we going to do? I'm like, there's no way your baby's carrying it. Not after everything we've been through. We're 0 for 4.
Hmm.
We paid for it. She's pumped full of hormones. I'm just playing the math at this point. So she relents. We do it. It hits, but it's hit before. A couple weeks go by, and I get a text from the surrogate. It's a picture of the ultrasound and 2 dots and the word twins. And I'm like, oh my God. And I come home. My wife's sitting at our dining room table, like, what are we going to do? And I just silly me. I'm like, there's no way all 3 of these babies are going to make it. Not after everything we've been through. So again, she relents, and we go 3 for 3. So my wife delivers a healthy baby girl, and 10 weeks and a day later, the surrogate delivers a healthy boy and girl. So
10
now I'm like,
weeks later. Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
Fellas, hey, well, I got you both real quick. So I'm really trying to drill in our work holding options at Hill and all of our shops. Got any advice?
Mike, it's as simple as RasRam.
As what?
RASRAM, you've never heard of it?
I have not.
Paul?
What Nick is referring to is the 7 habits of highly effective work holding:
That makes more sense.
repeatability, accessibility, scalability, reliability, adaptability, and modularity.
If you want to find all of these principles in one catalog, check out the SMW Autoblok catalog. You can find it at smwautoblok.com.
Thanks, fellas.
Funny side story,
Wow.
like, I remember so the surrogate lived down in Joliet, which is about a 45 to an hour drive from where we were in Chicago. So, got in our sweet new Toyota Sienna minivan, don't be jealous, and drove down there with 3 car seats and 1 baby, and the next day came home with 3 babies, and life has not been the same since. So,
Wow.
you have kids and it changes kinda everything, and it puts a whole new kind of pressure and focus on you. I decided to try to pivot my career to Chicago. So I still had that steel business in Indiana. I had a gentleman that was running it for me in my stead, and I still would go back about once a month just to put my hand on the wheel and make sure everything was okay. It was in the RV industry, so it was volatile. Some years were good and some years meh. And I ended up teaching at Northwestern. I taught entrepreneurship for about 7, 8 years. I worked at the garage. So I got like involved with startups, which was really cool. And that's
What's the
where I really got.
garage?
Yeah, the garage was like an incubator for student startups that was cross-campus,
Okay.
cross-disciplinary, so it was at the intersection. This is when entrepreneurship got really sexy and really hot in the mid, 2000 teens, if that's what you call it,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was just sort of right place, right time, and I'm like, I'm either gonna find an idea that I wanna run with, or I'm gonna meet somebody that's doing something cool, and I'm gonna wanna run with that. So I was there for about 3 years, had a lot of fun meeting and networking in Chicago and getting, like, exposed to some interesting technological trends and seeing the power of scale and, like, entrepreneurial thinking. Like, when you do it, you don't really think about the process of entrepreneurship, and then when they asked me to teach it, I kinda laughed. I'm like, "How do you teach entrepreneurship? You just do it." Well,
Sure.
it turns out there is kind of a science to it. If there's an approach to the thought process and the attributes of entrepreneurship, and I always believe that if you focus on those things, resilience and grit and learning from, failure and stuff like that, that you can persevere because entrepreneurship it's a grind, and you've got to be able to.
Absolutely.
It's really a survivor curve. Like the longer I can go, the better my chances are success. And so that, story I told you is a long story. So do all that. I tried my hand in the tech industry, realized that, when you have 3 kids and a cancer survivor for a wife, startup salaries suck and startup benefits really suck. So people were like, "Hey, Billy, maybe you should go pay attention to that steel company." As I was reconsidering what I wanted to do, people were like, "Hey, you still have that steel company in Indiana. Maybe you should pay attention to that." It's like, that's probably a good idea. So this was 2019. We had just lost a customer account and we needed to get some sales in quick. So I just happened to, through networking and knowing some folks, found an acquisition opportunity. So made an acquisition to fill some of that capacity, especially on the weld side of the business, right at the end of 2019 into early 2020. Well, about 10 weeks later, this little thing called COVID came a
COVID.
knocking. So
Yes, it did.
we went from an integration to a turnaround to basically shut down. Now, some of our
Oh, wow.
customers were in the commercial vehicle space, so we had some critical industries that we got to supply. So that kept us going a little bit, and it really gave us the opportunity to sort of reformulate and lay out the production lines and kind of
Yeah.
get ready and hope for uh, the eventual reopening of the world and the economy. So sure enough, that happened, and lucky for us, the RV industry was a huge beneficiary of
Absolutely, it
COVID
was.
bounce. So everybody was buying RVs left, right, and center. So we had a strong came out of 2020 really strong. We had a record 2021. This is where I was like, all right, now I have an opportunity to take this to market, but I need an owner operator. So my then general manager was 71. I'm like, all right, I need to do something about that. So I hired the young guy. I won't bore you with the details. Let's just say it didn't work out with the 2 of them. My older general manager retired. I had to bring him out of retirement in about May of 22, just after that kid had kinda spiked our culture. Got some customers back, got some employees back, and about 2 months later is when the RV industry it was like the music stopped.
Mhm.
And having been through multiple, industry ups and downs, I looked at this one like, "This is not gonna be a short one, and I do not wanna ride this one." So I did everything. I scrambled every jet and made every phone call I could and found somebody that was looking for real estate to expand in a business line where it was really complementary with what we did. He asked me what I wanted. I gave him a number and I got out. So that was nice. Spent a few months with the family. I'm like, all right, now I got to figure out what I want to do next. Got a guy that I knew was a consultant. I didn't know anything about consulting. I really didn't want to go into private equity and be a hired gun. And I was too damn old and tired to do a startup. So I'm like, all right, I'll try this consulting thing. And, he painted a really kind of cool picture of what it could be like. And I'm a builder. So I'm thinking, all right, what kind of processes and stuff can I do? I get into it about a year into it, not even. I realized that, his idea of scale and growth and mine were really different. I also realized that I'm a crappy employee. Um,
Hmm.
Entrepreneurs tend to be. And I really just didn't like the business model. So beginning of 2024, I decided, you know what, I'm going to get back to doing what I know how to do, just own and operate businesses. So I started the search, ended up hiring somebody to help me with the search after I realized that kind of like anything in sales, you need to increase your surface area and your opportunity for luck. And trying to work full time while also doing a full time search was hard. Well, because I also had that family I got to worry about. I found a company in Holland, Michigan that I really liked, but the price ran away from me. That was like June, July of 24. And then, which was another job shop, smaller. They supplied parts to food, flow control, and automotive, and a lot of smaller mills and lathes, but really job shoppy. And it was really good. It was my first sort of taste of that space. And then month later, sure enough, they put General Machine in front of me. I'd never seen job shop margins before, so that coming from the production world that is Elkhart and the RV industry, and what I'm used to grinding out there, running 3 shifts, and I saw this, I'm like, "Whoa, that can't be right," and, kind of dug back the onion, peeled back the onion and started to understand
Like
the
too
business.
low or too high or what?
Too high. I was like,
Too
"Holy
high.
cow, I've never seen margins like that." Now they're
Okay.
it's project based, so you know, you're selling labor versus material. I was selling a lot more material than labor, and so I think the leverage on labor seems to be a lot more if you do it right and you have the right mix of business. And it also turned out they had some serendipity. They had a couple of projects that started right after COVID, and they never lowered their price, and then production tapered, but they captured a pretty big windfall. So the story of General Machine, the owner and his wife, he was a very hands-on owner operator, had owned the business for about 30 years. Wife was the HR, admin, accounting person. They died in a plane crash about 4 years ago now.
Oh
3 kids,
gosh.
none of them in the business.
Oh,
So
brutal.
yeah, so it was, a tragic story, small town. He was a, really well-respected individual in the community, and you could tell in the plant. The plant was really clean, quality, tenure of employees, the customer, what they had to say about it, like just a really well-built shop. And then the general manager that stayed on, Wayne Harris, did a terrific job just maintaining the business. So when it was put in front of me, that's really what it was a business with good infrastructure, good people, good customers that had been on autopilot. They made a lot of what I'll call rookie mistakes when trying to sell the business that ended up benefiting me and the equity group that I found and that came along for this ride. And so found General Machine, and I do not know the machine side of the business is new to me. I know the fabrication side, but where I got excited is what I can do for it. The website at the time, you saw the new one, which
Hmm.
is an improvement, but the old one, they literally hadn't touched it in 10 or 15 years. My marketing guy's like, "It's the tech we can't even do anything with the technology, it's so old."
Sure. Yeah.
And when I see that, that tells me not only is there opportunity on sales and marketing, but if that's what they're showing to the outside world, I bet there's a whole bunch of opportunity for process improvement, digitization, automation, whatever you wanna call it on the shop floor. So
Yeah, for sure.
that was the plunge. So that's how I got here. Spent a lot of time learning, and I'm still learning every day about what we do and what we're good at and how to grow this thing and kind of what's next. So
Well, I'm glad you went back that far because that was fascinating. And congratulations on the 3 kids. That's
thank you.
quite a blessing. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things about your past that just dovetail quite nicely into owning this business and having the experience that is needed to, even though you don't know anything about machining, right, to move this thing forward in a really strong and healthy way. So that's super cool. So when did you take ownership of it? And you said 13 months ago, so
Yeah.
just at
So
the end of 25,
yeah,
right around.
February 1st of last year, 25 was day one. So we closed on the 31st of
Okay.
January, and I walked in that next Monday and like, "Hey, guys." So,
Did was that your first introduction to to most of the crew,
I
or
had
just
come
tell us
through
a
for
little bit about that process?
yeah, usually when especially in a situation like this, the seller, access is limited, so I came down for a couple of visits, but I was, and I did the same thing when I sold companies. They, however you wanna introduce me, I'm an insurance guy, I'm a banker, whatever sort of non-threatening person that might have a reason to be in the plant and walk around,
Mhm.
and so I got you get some access to the facility and kinda get an idea and, that's what I talk about again, for the production world I came from, you were not if you dropped food on the floor, you were throwing it away. Like a General Machine, I'm like, "I might still eat that." And that was impressive to me. The tenure of the
Uh-huh.
employees is impressive to me, but it's also which I'll come back to, tenure is great, but it also means there's a lot of tribal knowledge, and there's not a lot of new knowledge about what's outside these 4 walls, which is something I've come to learn in the last year. So had a chance to look, and then we went through a couple of iterations on the negotiation, and so I came down the week before closing, so the last week of January, and stayed in a hotel, and I got to come and meet everybody and get introduced. The seller kinda said, "Thank you, goodbye," and I said, "Hey, this is who I am." And then, Monday
And was
morning
this what who was the seller since the owners had died?
yeah, so the 3 kids basically hired a lawyer and a few other individuals. There was kind of a law firm and accountant that were the kind of the primary drivers in negotiating the sale. They eventually hired a broker, I wanna say the spring of '24. They tried to do it on their own for the first year, year and a half, and that
Mhm.
didn't help.
Yeah.
And then the broker came on and it was just one of those things where it's, time was not their friend.
Yeah. Sure.
And it ended up benefiting me, but it didn't, it was getting harder and harder for them because they had the general manager that I convinced to stay on for another year and wouldn't have done the deal without, wanted to retire about 2 years prior to that.
Oh, boy.
So he was, he retired at the end of this past year, still paying him as a consultant. So he's still around for, just that knowledge if we need it. And the
Yeah.
customers want, that comfort that we can call a friend anytime we need to.
That's valuable to have for sure.
Yeah.
How did the employees react to it when you walked in the door that first day?
That's it's kind of a funny story. I'm a talker if you hadn't noticed. And I get up and introduce myself, try to crack some jokes, and like it's crickets. And I'm like, oh. And what I've come to learn is the previous owner, was very much sort of that old school command and control, like, everything went through him. He told
Mhm.
everybody what to do and told them when they did it wrong, and just to so most people just didn't talk. It wasn't that they didn't have anything to say, it's just they weren't used to it. I'd be like, "Any questions?" And I'm used to teaching and being in a classroom where I can usually get a few hands to go up. So so it was kinda like, "Oh, alright, I hope it's not me," and fortunately, I have lost no employees in the 13 months, well, 12 and counting, I guess, um, due to anything but retirement or to our own choice to someone
Sure.
we brought on that didn't work out. So I had 4 retirements last year out of a
Okay.
company of, 16 people, so 25% of my
Yeah.
employees retired last year, which again, good and bad. Good because they stuck through, they had, retention bonuses, they had ample reasons and opportunities to leave, including dealing with this guy, and none of them did, which to me also speaks to what the previous owner had built and
Mhm.
hopefully some of the stuff that I was saying.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that cultural shift when people don't really know who you are, you can come across as friendly and outgoing on day 1, but
Yeah.
if there's, years of the way it used to be and just stay quiet and do your job and keep your head down, that's tough to get that to shift, right?
Yeah, it's taken some time, but I think that's probably been one of the most rewarding parts of this whole journey for me, especially getting out of Elkhart. Like I'm proud of where I come from, but everywhere I went in Elkhart, everyone was like, "Hey, Billy, we knew your dad, or we know your uncle, or we remember your grandfather." There's this sort of like
Mhm.
okay, yeah, but I'm me. And I go down
Yeah.
to St. Louis and people are like, who are you? Like this Cubs fan coming down to Cardinal country? Like, who is this guy? Um, so, I had that element, which was kind of fun to just I got to be me and sort of put myself out there. And then
Mhm.
to try to, you know, move that culture from this sort of like command and control to, and what I've learned, both in my consulting time and just in business in general, having done turnarounds is there's certain things you have to move fast on, and there's other things there's only so much change. Like you don't want to dial it up too fast. And so for me, it's a lot of like, all right, a lot of listening. I had a whole first 90-day plan, which is just shut up and listen. Like, I'm going to have a bunch of ideas, but shut up because
Yeah.
your idea is going to be wrong. For example, I'm like, hey guys, we're going to get into production because that's where I come from. And I'm like, this is easy. We got all these machines that aren't being used. Like, let's go get more production. And so I go visit customers and I visit vendors and I start talking and doing research and start learning the business a little more and, use these instead of this. And what I see is all these shops that are actual production shops and their machines are way different than mine. And I'm like, oh, wait, you can do that operation on just that machine and I got to do it on three? Oh, that's why I'm not competitive on that and won't be. Okay. All right. So,
Right.
it caused me to reformulate. So I think they saw me kind of not just being like, we're doing production come hell or high water because that's what I said. I'm like, we're going to do production. And I'm like, you know what? Our niche actually is our blue ocean is these medium to large parts that other customers can't do. And if we can capitalize on some of the other trends in the marketplace, I think we can carve out a really profitable niche for us. So, and then like
Awesome.
I always ask everybody, what's one of your biggest time wasters? And so you're from machining, so this is probably not a surprise to you, but it was a pretty big surprise to me talking to the machinist. I'm like, what's your biggest time waster? They're like, looking for tools. I'm like, what do you mean looking for tools?
I could
Like,
have
you
told
can't
you
find
that.
your wrench? Like, no, no, silly boy. I mean, we can't find the tool because we don't know where in the shop it is. And then if we find it, we can't find the insert because we got too many brands of tools. And then sometimes the tool that I need is on that machine over there, and I need it on this machine. So I got to take it off of that machine and move it over to this machine. And I'm just like, like the smoke's coming out of my ears, like does not compute. I'm like, wait, wait, wait. Well, why is that? Like, well, because it was cheaper to buy that brand and that brand and that brand and that brand of tool. But now we have all these brands and all these inserts and we can never find what we need. And I'm like, well, how much time does that cost you? Like, well, sometimes it can be an hour and sometimes it can take 4 hours. I'm like, 4 hours to find a tool? And
Yep.
then they're like, well, if I have to take it off another machine, it could take the whole day to take it off that machine and put it on mine. I'm like, how much does a new tool cost? And they're like, well, it depends, but maybe $200. I'm like, wait, so we're gonna lose an entire day of production because we don't wanna have 2 tools. I'm like, "All right, well, how do we fix this?" And so they're like, "Well, we should go to maybe a single brand for drills and a single brand for mills." And I'm pretending like I know what I'm talking about here, but I started to learn what that actually meant. And then they're like, "All right, there's these tool dispenser things where you actually put it in there and then you know where the tool is, and then we can get, like, multiple tools for the heavy users." And I'm like, "Holy shit, this is amazing. Like, why aren't we doing this?" So now we're in the process of implementing Blackhawk Industrial Cribmaster, and like I'm gonna have all that time that I used to lose that we can't resell when it's gone that I can sell to customers. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
amazing. Like that's like
Low
that
hanging
was just
fruit
sitting on
right
the
there.
shop floor. So
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I'm not at all surprised that they said that. It's so common. And it's true. Like, a tool crib is like the heart and soul of a machine shop because you cannot cut any metal without all the drills and the bits and the inserts and everything. And if that's just chaotic and it's just in this guy's toolbox and over here on this shelf and it's different brands and and you don't know where they are or you think they're in that machine, but that machine's using it, like it's just
yeah.
it's absolutely nuts that it can get that far. What were some of the other surprises and things realized that you had to face or deal with or didn't know, or I'm sure there must have been a very long list.
Yeah, well, there's so when I bought the company, their idea of sales was kind of the Maytag repairman, right? They waited for the
Hmm.
phone to ring or for the fax to
Right.
I'm like fax, squeeze me, the fax to whir or for the email to come in, and I'm like, wait, so do we not? We don't go see our customers? Like, no, I haven't gone to see our customers in years. I'm like, okay. So I knew rebuilding the backlog was going to be a big opportunity and challenge. they had not, the seller, as you can imagine, like a lot of times the seller doesn't want to spend the money. So we needed to hire in addition to the
Hmm.
people that were retiring. If I was going to achieve growth, I needed to hire. And it turns out, I bet you haven't heard this before. Finding machinists is really hard.
Hmm.
So I learned all about hiring machinists, found some cool technology, like, new platforms to do it. Worked with recruiters, like everything, things that I always eschewed in the past. Like, I'm not using a recruiter. Well, guess what? You're going to use a recruiter because labor's hard. So it's been a long, like most of my second and third quarter of last year were not planned, but spent building the team. Like I knew I had to build a team, but finding machinists proved to be something that was really difficult.
Hey, it's Paul from Making Chips. If you've been burned by recruiters who don't understand manufacturing, you are not alone. That's exactly why we created Hire MFG Leaders. We're not just recruiters, we're current and former shop owners, and we know what it takes to lead in this industry. Whether you're hiring your next operations leader, sales manager, or production supervisor, we'll help you find someone who actually fits. Learn more at makingchips.com/hire.
Hiring my new general manager who has strong experience in the machine shop has been a boon because he actually can interview these people and ask questions that I can't
Yeah.
and kind of separate the wheat from the chaff. And we're also starting to develop our own training and onboarding because I'm like, we can't keep finding these 55 plus unicorns and trying to steal them from another company. We got to be able to develop talent and train it up. Like we can't just throw them out there and be like, good luck. And then be like, man, I don't know why Bob's not working out. I'm like, really?
Right.
Did we give him any feedback? That's been one. And then this whole then there's that going on. And then I'm like, guys, I've been doing some research on machining and CNC, and I don't understand why we should price them differently. In my opinion, my best machinist, is the only one that can work on the manual. So why am I selling my manual hours for 30 to 50% less than my CNC? I'm like, that's just stupid. Like, good luck finding someone that can do that work. Those people are retiring faster than we can replace them. And why would I sell my capacity for less than what it's worth? So I'm like,
Sure.
CNC and manual machining now cost the same. If you don't like it, go find somebody else to do it because I'm not selling my capacity for that cheap and tying up my best guy to do your, I don't know,
Yeah.
lawnmower. We don't do lawnmowers, but anyway.
Sure.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Sure.
and understanding our pricing, and then we use an ERP system that is the bane of my existence. And they did this whole cost accounting thing, uh, with burden, and I'm like, okay. So now I'm like doing burden, and I'm like, well, why do we have one burden for the whole shop? Like machining burden is not the same as forming, and it's certainly not the
Hmm.
same as welding. So why are we pricing ourselves too expensive over here and too cheap over there? Like we're not getting welding work that we should be getting, and we're not getting forming and cutting work that we really should be because our burn rate's too
Absolutely.
damn high. So that
Yeah.
journey
Yeah.
has
Having
been,
that activity based estimating,
yeah.
that variable
So,
burden. Yeah. Yeah. Smart.
and then
Okay.
quoting has been the other one that's been interesting for me because, quoting in job shop is your lifeblood, right? You have to
Yeah.
be able to get enough quotes into the top of the funnel. But more importantly, once you get them in there, you got to be able to execute on them. And one of the things that drove me nuts last year was we lost more quotes, not because of our price, because we either took too damn long to quote the thing or we didn't quote it at all. I'm like, "Brr,
Right.
why did we do that?" So, new general manager, he's quoting much faster, has a much better handle on it. And we're not trying to get as scientific as we were before. Like, I'm like, I don't need to get it down to the penny. Like,
Sure.
rounding error is okay. And then, like, I'm doing some pretty cool stuff with technology and AI because I had all this tribal knowledge. And the one nice thing about my ERP system is I have like 20 plus years of jobs in there. And then I have 10
Hmm.
plus years of scanned travelers, prints, pictures. I'm like,
Scanned. Yes.
if I put all that together and throw it into an LLM and start training it and using some of these new visual things and some of these new, you know, things that are coming out faster than I can keep up with it in the technology front, like we call it the Wayne brain. My GM retired. So now if I can have the Wayne brain, so when we get an RFQ come in, I can throw it into the Wayne brain and get like stuff that we've done in the past that's similar to that and
Right.
speed up the quoting time. And then I'm like, oh, now it's extracting data out of our ERP system in a way that I can't get it out of the damn ERP system. I'm like, whoa, that's pretty cool. You just saved me a whole bunch of reporting time every week. And I'm like, wait,
Hmm.
wait, wait. What if we take that and then we actually create a portal on our website where our buyers can come and they can put an RFQ in there and they can hit the Wayne brain and kind of our other, call it our juju juice, our magic, and then it'll
Hmm.
spit out a range. And then if that's within their budget, they can hit a button and send it in, and we'll give them an actual quote. Like, holy shit, we have a
That's
qualified buyer.
fantastic.
So we're doing some fun stuff like that.
That's beautiful. Awesome. So what is uh snapshot, what did 13 months ago, 12 and a half to today, just like what else has changed beyond some of the things you just mentioned? Like
Yeah.
revenue
So
growth or new customers or, new
yeah.
machines, whatever.
Did buy my first new machine, so we bought a vertical mill. We had an old single tool A Trump that was our backup vertical mill and our workhorse. Now, that was another thing that I've learned, like, so the previous, just like the tools, we don't have one single piece of equipment that's the same brand as another. So that's a whole nother fun one. But we have our workhorse vertical mill, and she went down a couple of times last year. I'm like, all right, I can't afford to lose her, and so we bought a new Doosan. So I did the research and did all that
Yep.
fun, which was kind of cool. And so decided, all right, I'm going. I like baby blue. We're going with Doosan. Bought a new vertical mill and put her in place. So that was a fun process. The team did the research, get her implemented, and kind of showing, hey guys, this is the direction we're going. So we
Nice.
did that, sales and marketing, like I do most of it, but now we actually have a social presence. I'm still trying to get over, like, I don't like to post on social media. It's like, I'm like, I kind of grew up in that generation where I'm like, I'm, not quite comfortable doing it. I'm like, but my marketer's like, you got to post more. I'm like, fine. I'm doing that. And that's starting to lead to more inbound opportunity. This year, I'm
Nice.
starting to go to more conventions and like, I got to get out there. Like, capacity was an issue for us last year. We fixed that through people and process and equipment. Um, and then I'm just a big, like, culture, like it's, I've been moving that and I'm a big proponent and believer in kind of the EOS model. I
Hmm.
just don't want to pay a consultant to do what I believe I can do. So I'm doing EOS Billy style, implementing the things that I think have the most impact on our organization in the order and amplitude that will have the biggest impact. So started doing level 10 meetings because there was no, like, they didn't meet at all. Our
Mm,
schedule was a mess. Like, nobody knew except for Wayne where anything was in the shop. So
sure.
now we've kind of solved for that, but we need software to actually take it to the next level because it's still
Right.
transparency. I'm a big believer in transparency. Like, if they don't know how we're doing, then how can we get better? And I'm like, I don't have the ideas. Like, I'm just the guy that's like out chasing things. Like, stick me on like I will bird dog whatever you want me to bird dog, but I got to know what to bird dog. And you guys are doing the work every day. You have the best ideas on how we can do it better. And I will share the improvements with you. So I'm going to share how we're doing and how we can do better and actually pay you on a sliding scale. So we have, ABCD, and it's, A is a 1.25 multiplier. So if we exceed our metrics for that month, boom. So they can make more than what the pool actually is available. And
Love it.
so we're just implementing it now. And my goal is to, I want these guys coming to me and being like, hey, if we move this over here, what if I have tools over there? You know what? If we actually put this machine over here, it would save me time. Or why is the saw all the way over there? And I got to drive the forklift from the back of the shop onto the road into here to get a piece of steel to go back over there. And we never need the steel that's in that rack here. We need it back there. I'm like, oh, well, that seems like a simple fix. Why don't we move the saw? Well, because we got all this other equipment in the way. I'm like, oh, shit, maybe we should get rid of some of that equipment that we're not using. So, just sort of, you start,
Endless.
yeah, you just,
That's exciting, though. That's
yeah,
really dynamic. That's
it is
fun.
fun.
That
So
is
those probably
super
some of the big
cool.
changes, culture, sales and marketing, new equipment, new faces. We've got a lot of new faces, and
How many
um,
people do you have now?
we're still at 16. Like,
Okay.
it's job shops. So
Some retirements, some new folks.
yeah, so we're looking to hire. A new welder actually just started with us this week, and we're kind of, right now it's, the economy is hard to predict. Let's just say. And, with some of the uncertainty out there, it's making my customers, like, they're like, a lot of the feedback I'm getting is the demand's there, but the orders aren't right now. And
Mm,
so, and job shops kind of do this anyway. So we're kind of like, all right, I'm not like a lot of companies. Like, do I want to make that higher and take on that extra expense before I have the orders? Or I'd rather stretch the team I have, work a little bit of overtime, and then bring on the person, and then we'll get the equipment if I get, so we're playing this game right now of like, you know, this is a year where we could double this year in revenue, or we could do half of what we did last year, depending on what the economy does. So,
yeah. Sure, sure. Huh. Yeah, that is a lot of uncertainty, um, and I get that a lot from a lot of people. Just
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
they don't
I'd
know
love to
what which.
buy some new equipment, but I'm like, I'd like to know,
That
I'd
was
like that be driven by customer demand, not by Billy has an
yeah.
itch and wants to buy a new toy. So,
Yeah. I mean, we saw the metalworking index finally hit above 50, into growth mode
yeah.
just last month for the first time in a long time. So that's encouraging. I'm hearing generally positive signs from a lot of shops out there. So yeah, fingers crossed that those orders start flowing more.
Yeah. The I believe the underlying trends are favorable. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
there's
100%.
yeah, not to get into a discussion of the economy, that's not what we're here for, but those are ebbs and flows, there's noise. So I'm just like, what's the signal? Let's just follow that and control what I can control. So
Hmm.
What do you think of when I say OTD? Well, in making chips, we've got lots of acronyms to deal with, but OTD is on time delivery. On time delivery is part of Hill's mission: deliver quality parts on time, every time. When I was shopping for an ERP system, I was looking for something that would ensure that we do that on a regular basis. Delivering jobs on time was something we struggled with, and I know that most shops struggle with. I think I saw recently that 70% of shops struggle with delivering parts on time. So the best decision I made in that, enter ProShop. Did you know that many of ProShop's customers quickly experience 95% or better on-time delivery rates with their customers? And now ProShop has a guide to help all shops, whether you're using ProShop or not. Visit ProShopERP.com/95. Again, that's ProShopERP/95 to get your copy today.
So you mentioned you didn't say profit sharing, but kind of, the ability for your employees to benefit in the improvements.
yeah,
Um, that clearly is a strong signal that you're a different kind of leader than the one that owned the company before.
yeah,
Maybe just share a little bit more of some of the additional things you've done or some anecdotes of what it's taken to have people, open up or share their ideas that they maybe
yeah.
previously haven't. And is that profit sharing component like a critical part of that, or it's just like icing on the cake? Or I'd just love to learn a little more about that side of things.
Yeah, no, so, I mentioned the EOS stuff, so the other in the listening, the first 90 days, so I do a one-on-one every month with the office staff, so there's 5 of us, so 4 of them every month,
Hmm.
and, I ask questions. They're starting to get better at asking me questions, like, I'm like, "This is supposed
Hmm.
to be a dialogue, but I'll drive for a while." Um, and then through that, I've also built, we have rocks. We have quarterly rocks and, which is a combination of company and personal. And so in those one-on-ones, it's like, how we doing on those? And then I get ideas from them and then, kind of like a coach. I'm like, well, how do we solve for this? Interesting. Well, what would you do? All right. Well, why don't you do that? And that's been empowering for a lot of these folks to actually then kind of take ownership of it and then ask questions because I'm kind of intentionally ambiguous because some part of it is I don't know what the end result or the answer is, and part of it is they learn in the struggle. So if I do all the work
Hmm.
for them, I run out of time. We don't get very far, and they don't learn. So there's the one-on-ones, and then I do one-on-ones with the shop guys every quarter, and so that's
Okay.
provided
Nice.
a real, avenue to understand what their pain points are and, what's going on outside of work and what do they like and for them to get to know me a little bit. Like for example, one of our new machinists he's also he one of his hobby is he makes jewelry. He's legit like cuts
Cool.
gems and does all this
Hmm.
stuff. And so he made a pretty cool necklace for my wife for Christmas, and he's making necklaces. Just one for my daughter, who her birthday was 2 weeks ago, and he's working on the next one for my other daughter, whose birthday is in April. So that's been
That's
kind of
sweet.
fun. And then another
Yeah.
guy makes like sausages and like eggs and stuff and brings that in. And so, you don't know about this stuff. And all of a sudden you're like, hey, let's bring that stuff in. And, birthdays, we do donuts and just, excuses to
Hmm.
celebrate. We had retirement parties when the guys retired. And I spent money that my shareholder, yeah, I guess they're my shareholders. My investors probably would have rather had me keep in the company, but I'm like, I want to send a signal that like, even though this isn't my company and I didn't hire them and I didn't work with them for 19 years, like I value them. And I want them to feel good about their time here and feel like they can come back anytime. And then I got off track and
That's
I forgot. Well,
nice. No,
yeah,
that's good. That's good. I mean, that all those things help build that culture, build that trust, get people to buy in to this new vision that you have for it.
yeah. And
So,
then, so that was your question. So now what I'm doing is the I've been promising the bonus plan, so we're rolling it out this year, and I had to figure out what to measure, and I had to learn the company, understand our capabilities, and then actually put them out on the shop floor and teach them, like, what this means. This is what EBITDA is. I'm like, "That's just a fancy word for cash flow," and, to try to explain to them, and then compare it to a budget. So it's part teaching and educating, but also, this is how we're doing, and we're gonna share. Some months we're a job shop. We're gonna have months that are gonna look really good, and then we're gonna have months that are gonna look really bad. And
Hmm.
so we're gonna share in the success. And in those other months, there won't be a bonus, but doesn't mean there's not a chance for the next month. And
Right.
um, and I think when they start to see it, I'm excited because we're gonna have our first one next week when I get back. We'll do January and February. It'll be almost over, so they're gonna start being able to think about in March how they can impact March numbers based on what they saw in January. It's taken me a lot longer to report, part because I'm up here this week, and part because our accounting's a mess, which is a whole other thing with our
Sure.
ERP.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What metrics do you track that you've now started posting and sharing to, make sure you're steering in the right direction?
Yeah. So I do our weekly revenue, and then I
Okay.
do our weekly spend, and then compared to budget. I'm like, this is what our budget is for the month. This is how we do each week. This is what, we budgeted to spend each week. This is what we did. And then I'm a big fan of contribution margin. So, because if I go with the next step with contribution margin, it's contribution margin per hour, which then leads into capacity value. And then, I won't belabor all that. Basically, job shops, we sell time. So how do I measure our impact on time? This job shop, they're the 4 guys, they don't impact the price. They don't impact the cost of the material that we buy,
Hmm.
but they do impact how long it takes. And if they do it right, they don't have to redo it. And so that has an impact on time and the amount of material that's used. So if I do contribution margin, that gives me a better look at our actual profitability on that job than labor plus burden. Because burden to me, like, overhead is overhead. Like,
Right.
I'm trying to squeeze as much through this hour as I can. Like, my overhead doesn't really change based
Yeah.
on my production. My variable costs do, but my overhead doesn't, unless I had equipment. But so I do that, but I break it down between our time and material jobs and then our production jobs.
Mm.
And because I want them to see the dollar difference and the margin difference. Um, then I'm trying to track our efficiency, which is interesting because we sandbag our estimates in order to provide cushion in our schedule. Historically, that's what we've done, which
Yeah.
unfortunately has a bunch of downstream impacts. So
Yes, it
our
does.
efficiency is like 130%. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, we don't measure setup time. Like, we're not, no. And then just as you do this, you start learning other things. So I don't even report efficiency. I do productivity, but then I've learned that the way we measure productivity is flawed again because of how we track things in the shop floor and whatnot. So, but I'm still like, I want to show it because I want to say, like, it's not always your fault if we don't have enough work for you to do.
Mhm.
However, what you do with the time that we do have is important. And again, we're selling time. So I'd love to track on-time delivery, but for some reason, Job Boss doesn't do that very well, just like they don't schedule very well. So I've got this
Yeah.
blank for on-time delivery that I have yet to figure out,
Hmm.
and I'm not sure a PhD student could figure out how to do it with what the Job Boss kicks out.
Well, I am so with you on estimating, and the problem you just described, and I've been beating this drum for years that the role of the estimator is to be as accurate as possible. The role of sales is to quote it so you make a good margin and what the market will bear, but you should not be changing time to sharpen or fatten your pencil. The
Right,
time should be the time. The setup
right.
time accurate, cycle time accurate, inspection time as accurate as you can
Amen.
be. And it's still a guess, but based on historicals and everything, you can get pretty accurate. But yeah, do not pad it with extra hours because you think the customer will pay that. Just add extra margin. And because you're totally blowing up everything downstream when you're like, oh, yeah, this is a 50-hour job. Be like, no, it's actually a 35-hour job. That's
Right,
a good target. We should have it done on next Thursday, not the following Tuesday.
right.
Yeah. So don't get me
Yeah,
started
because
any
now it's like,
further.
if we estimate it at 50 and it goes in my schedule, which, keep in mind, my schedule is kinda like my
Sure.
inventory is not real in the system that we use today. Um, but now that's 15 hours I don't know that I can sell, right? Because I think that
Sure.
50 hours is spoken for. Well, I don't if that 15 hours doesn't get filled magically by some other order coming in that we just happen to squeeze in, like, that's gone. Like, now I'm paying a guy to, sweep the floor, which, I like a clean shop, don't get me wrong, but I'd rather have them working, and I think when they see the bonus plan, they'd rather be working as well. So,
100%. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good one. That's an important one. It's a little bit in the weeds, but I like it. That's really important. What would you say is the most critical thing you've changed in the last 13 months that has had the biggest impact?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it's I wanna say it's just the meeting pulse, the
Mm-hmm.
one-on-ones as well as the team meetings, because I
Yeah.
think there was no communication, and, I'm so grateful that I had Wayne for the time that I did, for the 11 months that I had him, but he represented the old way of doing things, and everything had to go through Wayne, which meant he was the only one that knew the schedule, he was the only one that knew what the customers needed or wanted, he was the only one that knew, like, where to get things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kinda had to live with that last year because I told the new members of my team, I said, "Listen, if I were Wayne and I'd stayed on past my expiration date and I knew I was retiring at the end of the year, I'm not changing either. Don't ask me to change.
Right.
That's ridiculous." So I didn't. Like, I just sorta let Wayne be Wayne and was grateful for Wayne, but kept sort of that one-on-one in the meeting pulse because I wanted the other team members to feel like they were part of the conversation and had influence on what we were doing and where we were going. For example, my plant manager was my press brake operator. He's kind of a jack of all trades, but that he's phenomenal at that, but he can do a lot of other things. And I don't have a plant manager. We don't really have a need for a full-time plant manager. But, like, he's so valuable. I'm like, "Brian, you're gonna be my working plant manager," and I include him in all the leadership meetings, brought him to our strategic planning meeting in December, and he doesn't contribute much, but man, when we need something done, like, he is a doer, and I tell him all the time, like, "Brian, I appreciate you. Like, you just get stuff done. Like, I don't need you to speak up in the meetings. When you have ideas, let me know, like, but I know if I gotta count on somebody, I can come to you." And I think that sort of ripples out to the rest of the organization. Like, I ask them, "How can I help?" I look at my job as I'm here to find resources, and I'm here to remove obstacles. Like, that's my job, and to get sales. Like, I'm the sales guy, and I'm the HR and the accounting and the finance guy, but that's not as important. So, I think just, I don't spend as much time on the floor as I probably should to learn the intricacies of the business, but I hire for that. I spend time on the floor to understand the people that are out there and what their needs are, and then how to sell our story so that I can find more customers to provide even more opportunities for my guys and girls on the floor.
I love that answer. That's awesome. Yeah. The communication and just having people feel like they're a part of something and their opinion is heard and they're respected. You can't put a price on that. Like, it's so valuable and it just changes the equation of like showing up for work, clocking in, punching the clock, and just like being disconnected versus like, I am excited about what's happening here. I'm affecting the output. I can benefit from it financially too. But yeah, I'm enjoying being part of this team, and I want to contribute. That's massive. Good for you.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see how that unfolds this year when we really get to see how, the tool dispenser program gets implemented this month. The bonus plan is implemented this quarter. There's a lot of things that I've been talking about and building towards that are really going to start happening this year. And the sales flywheel starting to turn. Like, we did get some new customers. Like, I am starting to get out into the wild. And it's funny when you go to these networking events, as you know, like, you meet people. And if you're not out there and telling them who you are and what you do, no one can help you. And, like,
Yeah.
there's serendipity all over the place. So you bump into a guy like, "Oh yeah, oh, what do you do? Oh man, yeah, I have a need, or I know a guy that you might want to talk to." And so, like, just getting that flywheel spinning,
Hmm.
has been fun. So
Yeah. It's not an overnight thing. You can't just turn on POs. It is a long term. Did you have good success going and visiting your long-term customers and just saying, "Hey, this is me. This is what we're doing. This is what I'm changing." Yeah, how did that work?
yeah, that I learned a lot from the customers, including, the lack of touch points. A lot of them were like, "Oh, you're still there." Which was good. But it was, you always want to, like, first thing you want to do when you come into a situation like I did, buy a new company, is go mine what's already there. And so they needed to be, one, meet me. This is who I am. Got an equity group. We're looking to grow, invest in the business. Like, what are your problems? How can we help solve them? Which allowed me to hear a lot of things about their pain points, which shaped kind of our strategy and direction. And then it also led to an influx of demand because now they knew that we were there and we weren't going away. And so the orders definitely started flowing. One of the big customers that they had that the seller lost in 2024, not necessarily anything they did wrong, it was sort of a strategic direction, and they were a manufacturer that's tied to the home building industry, and that really tapered off in 2024. But I'm a persistent little bugger, and I kind of kept reaching out to him, and I was like, "Hey, you mind if I come by?" And then went by in May, did the introduction. I said, "Hey, by the way, my family business, we used to buy your machines, and so I've got some history and knowledge of you, and would love to figure out how we can help out." And so that led to well, actually, and we're doing this, and you might be able to do that. So we had to get requalified as a supplier, and then we got our first big order that we just delivered last month. And when the home building industry takes off, I expect that one to kind of follow suit, and
That's cool.
stabilizing the kind of your core customers, and then learning the type of business for me to target. Like the T&M guys, they're great, but I can't. There's not a whole lot I can do but wait for something to break or wear out, and they send it to me.
Mhm. Yep.
So I go see them once a quarter, once every 6 months, just to, hey guys, here's a hat. Let me know if you got anything else. But it's those sort of production folks now that I'm pivoting more and spending more time with, because they're the same trends that are affecting me are affecting them.
Mhm.
Hard to find labor. There's a reshoring of manufacturing, although that, it's not anything like the pace that people might think it is. It's going to take a long time for that to happen, but still a trend that's favorable to the industry. And because of some of that, what I'm seeing with a lot of our customers and where I'm trying to really drive us is, and I saw it in the early days of my first steel business. We had a customer that they used to weld to the chassis in the RV industry, and we developed a product where we took that out of the shop, and they would buy what we call the bridge beam, and they would huck it to the front drive and the rear diesel engine. And instead of having to have hundreds of chassis in the yard, they were able to have tens of scores of chassis. Let's say they reduced their
Mhm.
inventory by 80%, and those are $60 to $90,000 chassis. They also got to take all of the welding out of their shop and turn that into assembly space. They're assemblers, they're not manufacturers. My customers have a lot of manufacturing capacity. They're not manufacturers, they're assemblers, and they can make a lot more money doing that and outsourcing the production to companies like ours, because I'm going to go out and find the labor, and I'm going to pay them, and I'm going to hoard the labor, and I'm going to make the investments in the company because that's my sweet spot. That's my core competency. So let me help you focus on your core competency, which is building great equipment and servicing that, which means also having the spare parts on your shelf when your customer needs it so you don't lose that order. And if you lose that order, you might lose that future capital order, which means no spare parts on that. So I'm trying to find ways that how can I help you? Like, I will put your spare parts on my shelf. I got space, and I'll drop ship your customer if you want, just so you don't have to deal with those long tail spare part random things. Like, I'll
Yeah,
just fill in my capacity. So how can I?
brilliant. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
So, I'd love to shift, and we just have a few minutes left here, but the last little bit I want to talk about, like, what's the future? With this capital partner you have, are you going to replicate this model? Mike Payne and I did an episode. I can't even remember if it was his podcast or mine, but it was how to 4x your money buying machine shops, right? And the idea is that if you can buy a shop at a relatively low multiple because it's underperforming, it's antiquated, it's not that hard to double the multiple by investing in automation and new things, and process and people. And, their sales are probably lagging because they haven't invested in sales and marketing. So
Yep.
if you can double that in a year or two, go from 2 million to 4 million and double your multiple, that's a 4x return. And so share maybe the vision of General Machine and what you plan to do. What does it look like in 5 or 10 years from now?
Yeah, no, it's a great question because that's what gets me excited, and I try to explain to my kids, this is why Daddy's not around as much as I used to be. So the vision was, basically find our first company, which is General Machine, and whether that becomes the platform or we buy another company that becomes the platform and we bolt General Machine to it is sort of the direction. Is it geographic? Is it like General Machine shops? Is it a totally different vertical? We're still kind of assessing that. We're being opportunistic and looking at some opportunities. But the goal is, first and foremost, let's make General Machine as awesome as it can be, and develop the playbook, which is not just how we find and then do our diligence and acquire, but how we operate. All the things that you just said. What are the things that we're looking for, and where are the leverage points? And for us, it's definitely sales and marketing and technology. I got some badass technologists that are working on some really cool stuff that are going to be replicable across future acquisitions, like that quoting project that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be switching ERPs, and some of these decisions that I'm making are really important because what I pick is going to end up being the one that we're probably going to move the next one to, and the next one, because I get scale. I mentioned, that HR and accounting back office company I built. I saw the power of scale in the back office. So for me, I want to buy these businesses, get the core team in place, implement the playbook, and then get the F out of the way and support them operationally, but then strip off all the back office. You don't need to worry about IT, accounting, payroll, HR, all of that compliance stuff. Gone. You just take care of the customers, the equipment, and the people. Then I'm gonna take your marketing because you don't need to do marketing. That's not your strength. I'll do the marketing. Any sort of national sales, we'll do that. So we'll handle all of that at that office, at that sort of centralized back office, if you will, which allows them to do what they're best at. Like, the guys that I want to hire, like my current general manager, he is awesome inside those four walls. And as much as I want him to get out and meet people and be, kind of salesy as well, that's where, I'm good at that. He's really good inside the four walls, and that's where those leverage points are. And so I want to give
Mm-hmm.
him all the tools to be successful there, and then maybe bring him with me to the next one, and then build a team. So
Mm-hmm.
I see it's just building businesses, but it's also building ladders for people to go from the shop floor to the management position to the next company. Because I'd rather hire from within than go and take my chances with some unknown or
Sure.
um. So I'd like to say in the next. You know, We'll buy between 3 and 7, depending on the size, companies over the next 10 years, I'm hoping.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of in the Chicago to St. Louis area. I think the more I think about it, geographically, that would be nice for me for a variety of reasons, but it also, I think, just enhances the complementarities. I'm like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily need a General Machine in California and a General Machine in New York and one in Florida.
Yeah, for sure.
So
That's a
that's where
beautiful vision. I
yeah.
love it. That is awesome. Well, anything else you want to share with us before we wrap this one up today?
Oh,
I
man,
did
I don't
not
know.
ask.
Yeah, I think one of the things I think one of your questions was like, what should job shops be doing right now? And I think, the big ones for me is tapping into all of the resources that are available in your local, state, and national for like workforce developments, training. Like I'm getting grant money to help build those training and onboarding programs. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
really? They're like, yeah, it's federal, it's state, like it's here. This is what it's for. I'm like, so I write a grant and then I track it and I do what I was going to do anyway, and you're going to give me money for it? Like, right. So that,
Awesome.
and then embrace technology. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's this sort of fear of where it's going, and some of it I think is real, but like think about how technology can help level up what you do and how you do it so that the people, you're not trying to replace people, you're trying to augment them. Like they don't need to be doing the boring, like repetitive stuff. Like give them the opportunity to think and be creative and bring their talents to work. It's going to be far more engaging for them, and like get rid of, like automate that stuff. Like why going back, like why are we scanning things? Like everything should just be digital. We should have tablets. Why do we have so much paper? Anyway,
Yeah.
embrace technology and take advantage of all those resources that are out there. And for me, it's been fun listening to your podcast. Like there's so much information and knowledge out there, and this community has been like, I joined the NTMA, and like it's
Awesome.
just an awesome community that wants to help, and we're all trying to help each other. So whether it's a competitor or a customer, you got questions, I got questions. I might call you, call me. Let's raise this boat together.
I love it. What a great, yeah, glad you're in the industry. We need more smart, energetic, driven people like you. So, uh, awesome. Well, thanks for sharing today. If people want to get a hold of you, your website is generalmachineinc.com,
Yep.
and it
Yep.
is fresh and beautiful. Nice work on that. If they want to reach out to connect to you, how would you be on the website suggest they
Yeah,
do that?
hit me on LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. It's just Billy Banks.
Yep.
I'm not as good at messages, so you might have to be persistent there. But connect with me. If I see you're from the industry, I'm more likely to do it because I
Mhm.
want to know what you're doing. I'm looking. We there's a great book by Cleon, I think is his name. It's like Steal Like an Artist. Like nothing was built without borrowing from somebody
Oh,
else. So let's
sure.
borrow from each other and
Yeah,
find ways
you
to help
bet.
each other. So I'm
Awesome,
game.
Billy. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Great talking to you today. Appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks, Paul.